Hello and welcome. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India, India's voice to the world. I'm Gautam Roy, and coming up in the next hour, India's capital Delhi gets ready with tight security, lights and delights for the upcoming G20 Summit. The African Union suspends Gabon's membership following the military coup. Flights cancelled and businesses closed as Hong Kong and Shenzhen prepare for the onslaught of Typhoon Saola. And Man U are handed a tough Bayern Munich match in the UEFA Champions League draw. Let's first talk about the mega build-up to the G20 Summit in Delhi. Well, India's capital, New Delhi, is set for the G20 Summit. It's taking place between the 9th and 10th of September. Women-led development is said to be a focus of India's G20 presidency, with the nation hoping to use the forum to promote inclusive growth and development. This includes a focus on selecting more women for leadership roles and boosting female participation across all organization sectors. Jessica Tareja has the details.
From the kitchen to the office, from the corridors of power to the boardroom, more women than ever before are opening the doors to work and to a brighter future.
Is this role across India?
Devi Raju Chintalapati says she never thought of doing a 9-to-5 job. Just a year ago, she didn't know how to type or even access the internet.
I started my first innings at the age of 50. So after my children married and my husband is working, so I feel bored and I wanted to work. So I already done, it's 50 years in my household works, everything perfect. But I need to work. That time I don't know how to use a laptop and how to open a laptop and how to communicate in English or Hindi.
That's all changed. Devi was hired by one of India's leading talent recruitment firms.
In just 1 year, she became a business development expert.
Devi is pitching new clients, she's making presentations, she's closing the deals. With the right attitudes, skills can be taught.
While society narrows down homemaking to a handful of stereotypes, Devi is determined to defy odds and continue working.
Last 1 year, I recruited 50 people. In that, 60% are women.
Domain knowledge, not only of the talent.
While women are still a minority in India's boardrooms, this organization boasts of a workforce that's 85% women.
We've given them an environment where not only people like Shanti, Eva, Devi, but many more women who work for our organization have flourished. They've not only done well and reached their potential, they are now recruiting a lot of women for all the clients that we work for, and hope they will create an environment in the future, and this will be women's age.
According to the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, more than 90% of working age women aren't even looking for a job. But here, women are recruited in automotive and manufacturing industries, which are traditionally dominated by men. They go on to become not just factory workers, but also managers, CFOs and CTOs in the future.
But the hard fact remains, fewer than 1 in 5 women work in the formal sector, and that's according to World Bank figures. India will be able to increase female workforce participation if it can find a way to tackle deep-seated prejudices. Jessica Taneja for DD India.
And with the world's coastal cities coming to terms with hotter temperatures and rising sea levels, one of the main priorities at this year's G20 Summit is green development and climate. The world's richer cities are also grappling with environmental challenges, with low-lying London forced to adapt. Stuart Smith has more from the UK capital.
The River Thames barrier needs an upgrade or a replacement to keep the fourth richest city in the world safe from flooding. The barrier's main job is to prevent storm surges rushing from the North Sea up the river into central London, a catastrophe which for the last 40 years has been prevented by solid metal and clever engineering. It's been successful so far, but global warming has forced the strategy to change.
The latest data indicates that sea levels are rising at a faster rate than they have previously. So we now know here on the Thames, by 2100, the mean tide level will be a metre higher than what it is now. And that's why we need to plan for the future and start that planning now.
That could mean closing this barrier less often or building an even bigger barrier downstream. In light of the changing data, the deadline for a decision on what to do has been brought forward from 2050 to 2040.
But there are concerns that while the plans to protect London look solid, the legislation and money for the various options has not been guaranteed.
At London City Hall, some are pushing for action now.
We haven't safeguarded the sites where the barrier needs to come out to the edges of the river, and if you don't do that, then how can you fit a new Thames barrier? And we need to have those sites safeguarded, and additionally we need some funding, proper funding for the Environment Agency, so that they can really start to take this forward.
Part of the issue, Cooper believes, is complacency and a lack of awareness about just how vulnerable London is.
Public awareness, particularly in London, is low of the impacts of flooding. I think there has been a tendency in this country to, in some cases, pretend that flooding is an issue for other countries abroad. I don't think that is the case at all. I think it will affect us not just around this country, but also in London, and therefore Londoners should be paying attention to this just as much as citizens anywhere else.
A new barrier would protect an additional 500,000 people and hundreds of billions of dollars in infrastructure. The debate isn't about whether something needs to be done, but when to make the call on the best solution. The designs for a new or upgraded barrier will be tested well over half a century later, all while the effects of climate change continue to manifest. Some scientists are trying to work out what it would take to stop that process.
For this sea level to sort of roughly stabilise, we would have to go back to pre-industrial temperatures. So we'd have to get the planet, 1.2 degrees colder than it is now. Otherwise, sea level is going to continue to rise at the rates or greater than it is now. And if we carry on warming the planet, it's just going to keep on accelerating.
So there's no doubt these plans will need to be implemented for 2100. How leaders respond to climate change now will dictate whether even more extreme plans will be required for 2200. Stuart Smith in London, reporting for DD India.
And continuing with our coverage related to the upcoming G20 Summit, we take a look at some of the member nations' leaders due to arrive in New Delhi. Who are they and what has been their road to leadership? Well, Emmanuel Macron is the 8th president of France. He was born on the 21st of December 1977 in Amiens, North France. Macron graduated from the École Nationale d'Administration in 2004. He worked as an inspector of finance, contributing his expertise for the French government. In 2012, Macron became a part of President François Hollande's team, serving as the Deputy Secretary General of the Élysée Palace. Between 2014 to 2016, Macron was appointed as the Minister of Economy, Industry and Digital Affairs. Macron launched the movement en marche in April 2016. On the 7th of May 2017, he made history by becoming the youngest president in the history of France at the age of 39. Macron was re-elected as president on the 24th of April last year. 43-year-old Rishi Sunak became the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom on the 25th of October last year. He graduated from Winchester College in England and later studied politics, philosophy, economics at Oxford University. In 2006, Rishi Sunak earned a degree in MBA from Stanford University as a Fulbright scholar. Rishi spent his professional career before politics in business and finance, co-founding many investment firms globally. He was elected the Conservative MP for Richmond, Yorks in May 2015. Rishi Sunak served as Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State between 2018 and 2019 and was the Chancellor of Exchequer, that is the Finance Minister of the UK, between 2020 to 2022. Justin Pierre-James Trudeau is Canada's 23rd Prime Minister. Trudeau was born on the 25th of December 1971 in Canada. Justin studied literature at McGill University, graduating with a Bachelor of Arts in 1994. He went on to complete the University of British Columbia's education program and spent several years teaching French, maths and other subjects in Vancouver. Before entering politics, Justin served as the chair of Katimavik on the board of the Canadian Avalanche Foundation and as an advocate for young people and the environment. Trudeau was elected a leader of the Liberal Party in April 2013. On the 19th of October 2015, Trudeau led his party to victory, winning a majority government. He was sworn in on the 4th of November 2015. On the 21st of October 2019, he led the Liberal Party to re-election, earning a second mandate from the Canadians. On the 20th of September 2021, Justin once again led the party to re-election, earning a third mandate to govern from Canadians. So the countdown is officially on for India's ambitious solar mission Aditya L1 as well. Launch is scheduled on Saturday at 11:50 a.m. Indian Standard Time from the southern state of Andhra Pradesh. The Aditya L1 mission is aiming to study solar activities and their effects on space weather. You can witness the launch live on the official website of the Indian Space Research Organisation as well as on DD India from 11:20 a.m. Indian Standard Time. Also on the moon, ISRO has detected a natural seismic event. It said the instrument recorded vibrations occurring due to movements of the rover and other payloads. ISRO also stated that the Chandrayaan-3 lander has made the first ever measurements of the near-surface lunar plasma environment over the South Polar region. Now let's take you over to Africa, and a high-level delegation from Kenya has visited ISRO's headquarters as well and met its chairperson. An in-depth discussion has also taken place on the potential opportunities for cooperation and commercial engagements between India and Kenya. Both sides agreed to work on concluding a memorandum of understanding for space cooperation with specific activities and timelines. The delegation congratulated India and ISRO for the landing as well. And in an exclusive conversation with DD India's Munmun Bhattacharya, Mexico's ambassador to India, Federico Salas Lotfe, has congratulated India for the success of India's lunar mission and also spoken about the potential of space cooperation between ISRO and the Mexican Space Agency. Here's more.
On space cooperation, considering Chandrayaan-3's success in a shoestring budget and the fact that the Mexico Space Agency as well as ISRO have entered into an agreement in the past on cooperation in the space sector for peaceful purposes, can we expect more tie-ups in space technology between ISRO and the Mexican Space Agency?
Well, the first thing I should say is that I want to congratulate India and all of Indians for this very proud achievement. And it's something that certainly Indians should be proud of what happened, but it's something that all of us around the world are very happy that you guys have brought the moon closer to us. We have been, as you said, our space agencies, the Mexican and the Indian space agencies, have been collaborating on the uses of space for peaceful purposes. We've had a long-standing memorandum of understanding between the two agencies and just recently, in the past year and a half or so, we signed an addendum, for example, to have a satellite observation to help us deal with natural disasters and forest fires. And as we've seen, this is something that is happening with tragic consequences in parts of the world, like in Canada or in Hawaii recently. So it's obviously something very important. We've had these problems in Mexico, you've had these problems in India. So this is something that, of course, that we see the immediate benefits of this cooperation, and we do hope that as we move towards the future, that we'll have closer cooperation with the Indian Space Agency.
And you can watch the entire conversation with Mexico's ambassador at 8:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time or 3 p.m. GMT on the 3rd of September on DD India. And still to come on DD India News Hour, the Indian Air Force is set to carry out one of its biggest exercises along the China and Pakistan borders. The African Union has suspended Gabon following the military coup in the oil-rich country. And we'll also tell you about the Indian government's latest move in favor of consumer rights.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, the Indian Air Force is set to carry out a major training exercise from the 4th to the 14th of this month in India's northern sector along the borders of China and Pakistan. All major fleets of fighter aircraft, including the Rafale, Mirage 2000 and the Sukhoi 30 MKIs, will be participating in the drills along with heavy lift transport aircraft and choppers, which include the Chinooks and Apaches. Codenamed Trishul, which is the Trident, the training exercise will showcase all elements of India's air power. And DD India's Nandita Dagar has got us more on this upcoming air exercise.
The Indian Air Force is going to carry out a major drill or exercise along the borders of Pakistan and China. Now, this exercise, which has been named Trishul, will be carried out in the states of Ladakh, Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Punjab, where all the bases along the borders will be activated. Sukhoi 30 MKIs, Rafales, Mirages, Jaguars, these fighter jets, which are frontline fighter jets of the Indian Air Force, apart from the attack helicopters, heavy lift helicopters, reconnaissance planes, as well as the special commandos of the Air Force, that is the Garud commandos, will be taking part in these exercises. Now, the unique thing about this exercise Trishul is that it is going to take place at the same time with the borders of Pakistan and China both, and therefore it is actually preparing for a two-front war, the possibility of a true two-front war, and in case that war breaks out, the Indian Air Force is ready and prepared for that. So all the logistics, all the bases, sensors, weapons, etc. will be activated. Also, this exercise Trishul comes, will begin before the G20 Summit begins in Delhi. That is on 9th and 10th, and it will continue after that too. As we know that there are ongoing tensions with the Chinese PLA along the in the northern sector, along the western borders in eastern Ladakh, and therefore it is very critical that the Indian Air Force also maintains its sharp cutting edge in case it is needed. With camera person Anil Kumar in Delhi, this is Nandita Dagar for DD News.
And now taking over to a disastrous story that is taking place, of course, in South Africa. The devastating fire at a dilapidated 5-story building in Johannesburg has claimed the lives of 74 people, including 12 children. Additionally, 61 individuals were injured and are currently receiving treatment at local hospitals. The blaze is one of the deadliest fires in recent memory worldwide. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa visited the site, calling the incident tragic. He said an investigation is being set up into the cause of the fire.
This is tragic. This is very sad, and I want to pass my condolences to that of of the government to the families of those who have passed on. This needs to be investigated. I was talking to the Premier earlier, and we are going through, and they are going through the process of setting up an investigation process, which the Premier and the city will announce in due course.
Let's in fact take you across to DD India's Mark Crofton for more on this terrible incident in Cape Town. Now, Mark, we just heard President Ramaphosa promise a probe which will ensure that such a tragedy doesn't happen ever again. Now, is a special team being set up to look into it, and not just what caused the fire, but all the circumstances which led up to such a high death toll?
Yes, local government is promising an investigation, and lots being said about what will be done and how it will be done, but the reality is that it is crystal clear that the circumstances that these people were living under were never safe, and it has certainly been a situation that has gone on for many, many years. On Friday, people who have not been allowed back into the building, those who were displaced by the fire, they spent the night in 3 different venues around the city of Johannesburg. But on Friday, they are now trying to recover their goods that might have been left behind, or anything that they may still be able to salvage. But the building is off limits. It's been cordoned off by police. They are still investigating. We have not had an official statement regarding what the cause of the fire was. And based on what has been seen this morning, there is a possibility that K9 units may have come across more remains, but this has not yet been confirmed. So the road ahead for those who are affected by this fire is very dismal at this stage. Those who are hoping to bury loved ones may have to wait as long as 3 days, which flies in the face of many people's religious traditions and customs when it comes to burial. And it's very, very hard for those who have been displaced. So one would hope that we would see somebody held responsible, or some group of people held responsible, but the reality is that at this stage, many of the challenges faced or presented by this tragedy have actually been in play for a very long time in the city of Johannesburg.
And what do we know about the situation, Mark, in South African cities when it comes to housing and safety standards? If similar buildings exist, shouldn't something be done in the immediate rather than waiting for the findings of a probe?
One would expect that something would be done, yes. The President said yesterday that working with the city and with the province, they are going to root out criminal elements and restore the livelihoods of people in the city. But when Herman Mashaba was mayor of the city of Cape Town, he was not a member of the national ruling party, mayor of the city of Johannesburg. And in that time, Herman Mashaba was saying on Thursday that he had identified more than 600 buildings in a similar state to what we've experienced here. Buildings that are referred to as hijacked, where criminal elements have taken over control of the building. They've started letting out whatever space they can salvage inside the place. And along the way, power supply gets cut, water supply gets cut, and those living within these buildings are living under very, very unsafe conditions. Very likely that an open flame, perhaps a candle for light, had caused this fire. And so, back when Herman Mashaba identified the problems, there was conflict between city and provincial government and national government, and still today the challenge remains that there are so many different government departments responsible for avoiding a situation where you end up with people living in conditions like this, and it's not going to be a simple fix. There have been efforts in the past to shut down buildings like this, and they've been met with deadly resistance in some cases, and so situations like this have been allowed to fester, not just in the city of Johannesburg, but in the inner cities of several cities around the country of South Africa. So it may not be a quick fix. One would hope that this perhaps raises an alarm bell, and we see some legislation and some changes that actually bring about safer living conditions for those who rely on low-income housing in the heart of our cities.
Yes, terrible way to learn lessons, but let's hope that it serves as a wake-up call. Thanks a lot for joining us, Mark. Now, the African Union has suspended Gabon's membership following a military coup that ousted President Ali Bongo. The military intervention is now the 8th in Africa's central and western region since 2020 and follows the recent coup in Niger.
The 55-member Strong African Union, now one member down. Gabon's involvement now on suspension amidst the unraveling coup that's seen 6 decades of the Bongo dynasty's power come to a sudden end. The military intervention came just days after allegations of fraud in the country's elections, in which President Ali Bongo was given a 3rd term in power. Now, the AU is moving swiftly to condemn the takeover until constitutional order is restored. But inside Gabon's borders, coup leaders have received public support for ousting the president.
To put it bluntly, I approve of the military intervention because it was necessary. I think the people of Gabon was a bit fed up with the Bongo regime.
Coup leader General Bright Nguema will now be sworn in as Gabon's new president on Monday, a move that's brought markets and trade near the border to a halt. Gabon is the latest African nation to experience a military takeover after members of Niger's junta seized power late last month. Military rulers there have now expelled the French ambassador, escalating tensions with the ally nation and prompting the EU's foreign policy chief to kickstart the legal process for sanctions.
We will support ECOWAS. We have expressed this will from the first moment of the coup. It's up to them to take initiatives and decisions in order to counter this military coup. And we will follow, trying to implement the same kind of sanctions that they have decided.
But with ECOWAS sanctions already in place, it's still yet to be seen whether more will bring an end to the military rule.
And let's take you across to DD India's Chris Okamringa, joining us from Kinshasa for more on this. Chris, what sort of an impact, if any, will this suspension have on Gabon?
Well, this decision by the African Union will mean that Gabon will not be able to participate in any activities of the African Union. That means they will not be able to attend meetings or vote on certain key issues that might have a bearing on their internal affairs. You know, the African Union was established to defend the sovereignty, territorial integrity of its member states. It's supposed to promote political and social cooperation on the continent, and also eradicate colonialism, and also back African countries, you know, in certain international global issues like climate change, pandemic. During the COVID-19 pandemic, for instance, the African Union helped certain African countries that could not afford to buy vaccines to get them from pharmaceutical companies. So Gabon will miss out on all that. The idea is to isolate Gabon, to make it a kind of a pariah state, so that it can quickly form a transition team and ensure that the power is returned to the civilian authorities. But the leaders, the coup leaders in Gabon, seem unfazed by this decision. They have said that they're continuing to go about what they have planned, and they also announced that they are going to appoint General Brice Oligui Nguema, who is the head of the transition government, as president on Monday, next week on Monday. And so they are saying that they're continuing with what they do not want any foreign meddling in the decisions, the affairs of their country.
Okay, so far being resolute as far as their moves are concerned following the coup. Thanks a lot for joining us for the moment, Chris. Still to come on DD India's News Hour, Japan gets some support over its Fukushima move from the US ambassador in Tokyo. From fast fashion to sustainable fashion in Spain, used clothes get a new lease of life. And Japan revels in its first restrictions-free summer festival in Tokyo after the pandemic.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy, and before we go any further, let's take another look at our top stories. India's capital New Delhi is getting ready with tight security lights and delights for the G20 Summit. The African Union has suspended Gabon's membership following the military coup. Flights are cancelled and businesses closed as Hong Kong and Shenzhen prepare for the onslaught of Typhoon Saola. And Man U have been handed a tough Bayern Munich match in the UEFA Champions League draw. And we're returning now to our lead story, Delhi gearing up for the G20 Summit. Let's now take a look back at the previous G20 Summits.
Initiated by finance ministers in 1999, the group of 20 met at leaders level for the first time in November 2008 in Washington, D.C., at the peak of the global financial crisis. The G20 was created in response to the financial crisis that arose in a number of emerging economies in the 1990s, and this summit focused primarily on strengthening financial regulation. The White House reported that the summit had reached what would be the Washington Declaration. The US summit achieved 5 key objectives in 2008. There was a common understanding of the root causes of the global financial crisis, actions taken by countries and to be taken to address the immediate crisis were reviewed. Common principles were agreed upon for reforming financial markets. An action plan was launched to implement those principles. The countries reaffirmed their commitment to free market principles. With this summit, there was a shift in global governance as a much more legitimate group could now take up relevant issues for over 2/3 of the world's population. Urvashi Kapoor for DD India.
Japan continues to dampen out opposition against its move to release radioactive water into the sea. US Ambassador to Japan, Rahm Emanuel, visited the Fukushima region on Thursday, extending support to Japan against Chinese action. Japanese officials have signaled the possibility of diplomatic action to urge China to lift its ban, including filing a World Trade Organization complaint. This, Japan says, is not based on scientific evidence. Let's now take you across to DD India's Andrew Wood for more on this. Andrew, hi. What sort of leg up do you think Japan will get in its contentious Fukushima water release move with Rahm Emanuel's visit to the region?
I don't think Japan has many friends over the decision to release the radioactive water, and it certainly seems to have lost a lot of goodwill, I think, as a result of it. It's quite easy, relatively speaking, I think, for the Americans to show solidarity with the Japanese, if you're being cynical, because, of course, if the water is released off the coast of Japan, that's on the other side of the world to America. But nevertheless, Japan and America, they are good allies. They've gone back a long way. So it doesn't take a lot for Washington to send an ambassador to eat some seafood with the local mayor and to reinforce the fact that America believes that the scientific evidence is such that the release of the water is not going to cause any particular ecological or environmental or harm to human health.
Okay. And the threat to take the matter to the WTO, could it possibly make China blink and revoke its ban on Japanese seafood?
Well, the American ambassador to Japan reinforced the view that, he said that China's complaint about the release of the water is economic coercion. He reckoned it wasn't based on scientific evidence. And that's what the Japanese government have been saying as well. They've spent a lot of time, they say, working with scientists, working with environmentalists to work out whether this is going to cause harm or not, and they say it isn't. I don't think that taking it to the World Trade Organization is going to make much difference. The World Trade Organization takes a very long time to decide whether, in this case, whether the restrictions are lawful or not, or reasonable or not. The idea is that sometimes countries will put restrictions on trade, not for real reasons, but because they want to protect their own industries. And in this case, I think there's a fairly good argument that China is perhaps using some form of economic coercion there. But at the same time, it's going to be years before the World Trade Organization makes up its mind. And then, of course, China may decide not to obey what the World Trade Organization says anyway. So I don't think there's much likelihood of Beijing blinking anytime soon on this.
It does seem that way, doesn't it? Thanks a lot for joining us for the moment there. Hong Kong is under a severe storm warning as a super typhoon Saola has approached it. Heavy rain and violent winds are expected to lash the city, with authorities saying the storm could be the strongest to hit Hong Kong in the last 5 years. Saola is packing winds of more than 125 miles per hour. That's about 200 kilometers per hour, which has brought the city to a standstill, shutting most businesses and schools. Over 100,000 people have been evacuated as China's southeast coastal region prepares for Typhoon Saola as well. Fishing boats in China's southeastern Fujian and Guangdong provinces were moved to the harbors, and lifeboats were prepared for emergency situations. According to China's National Meteorological Center, Saola could make landfall on Friday night or Saturday morning. And moving to Hurricane Idalia, which has now passed over the United States mainland, but across the country's southeast, hundreds of thousands of people still remain without power as the carnage caused by the powerful storm has been laid bare. The hurricane, which made landfall on Florida's Gulf Coast on Wednesday, submerged neighborhoods, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. US President Biden, who spent Thursday at the Federal Emergency Management Agency headquarters in Washington, has signed a major disaster declaration, with authorities promising to do whatever it takes to get affected areas back up and running. From the nation's capital, Benji Haya reports.
Homes ripped apart, roads littered with debris. The images from the ground in the aftermath of this weather system show communities dealing with significant damage. The sights, some are surreal. Eels swimming through eerie residential streets. And now the cleanup operation begins. This was the strongest storm to hit this part of Florida in more than 100 years, but its path may have helped spare much worse. It avoided heavily populated areas, and most locals did heed warnings to evacuate. It means only a handful of deaths have so far been linked directly to the hurricane. Yet, whilst residents for the most part escaped with their lives, many have lost their livelihoods. And to think, these are regions which had only just recovered from hurricanes in the very recent past. President Joe Biden at FEMA's HQ thanked federal workers for their assistance with this crisis and other natural disasters of late, including, of course, those devastating wildfires in Hawaii. He said it's impossible to deny the impact that climate change is having on our planet. Benji Haya in Washington, reporting for DD India.
And Japan is celebrating the return of its first restrictions-free summer festival season since the start of the pandemic. After years of COVID-related cancellations, towns and cities throughout the country are throwing a variety of celebrations and parties, some dating back a millennium. The festivals are a staple of Japan's cultural calendar, and many say the country has just not been the same without them. Our reporter in Tokyo, Chris Gilbert, has more.
It's been a long time between drinks. This mikoshi, a vessel carrying a Shinto god, is just one of many receiving the reverence of 500,000 participants of Tokyo's Tomioka Hachiman Festival, where they're doused in water to pray for rain and a good harvest. It's connected to a nearby Shinto shrine, which holds the festival every 3 years.
This festival has been around for 350 years. Festivals are about rebuilding communities. They allow people to connect with one another and the town flourishes. I think this is the reason why it's continued for such a long time.
This year, the so-called Water Festival went ahead after a few years of being left high and dry. After a pandemic cancellation in 2020, festival goers are glad to be back.
Since it's been 6 years, we have prepared carefully. Many were anxious and worried after so long, but everyone has cooperated and helped each other.
I have been participating in this festival ever since I was a child. I'm so glad it's back.
There are thousands of festivals held across the country every summer, steeped in centuries of rites and tradition. Although hardly any two are the same, people flock for the food and the fun. There are multiple layers of significance. Japan's brutally hot summers are also known as Obon, a time when people believe the spirits of our dead loved ones come home to visit us. Across Japan, this is celebrated with ancient dances, floating lanterns, and fireworks in cemeteries. But nearly all summer festivals are about connection.
When the festivals exist, the community is recognized. But in modern society, not everyone feels they belong to the community. The future of the festival's viability is challenged. The festival is challenged for its purpose. The coronavirus truly exposed this question.
While major events like the Tomioka Festival still attract people in their hundreds of thousands, Japan's depopulation crisis is endangering those in smaller towns. This festival has survived the pandemic, but challenges still remain for the future of Japan's thousands of summertime parties. Chris Gilbert in Tokyo, reporting for DD India.
And let's now take a look at some other stories making news around the world as well. Now, Singapore held its first contested presidential elections on Friday in 12 years. The voting was closely watched, with it likely to indicate the level of support for the ruling party after a spate of political scandals. Singapore's presidency is ceremonial and non-partisan, but party lines have already been established for the election to succeed incumbent Halimah Yacob. Voting is mandatory for its 2.7 million eligible citizens. To tackle rising issues of poverty and food insecurity rates, Brazil's president Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva launched the Brazil Without Hunger plan. The president said it's not just a food program, but also deals with improving the quality of life in the South American country. According to data, the number of Brazilians who find it difficult to feed their families has more than doubled in the last 8 years. A wall dividing the rich and poor in the Peruvian city of Lima has been taken down. The wall, made of cement and stones and barbed wire, separated neighbors with subpar housing and no access to basic utilities. Also known as the Wall of Shame, it stretched 4.5 kilometers long and 3 meters high. A Barcelona-based charity is doing its part to try and reduce the amount of fast fashion waste as the European Commission clamps down on major brands. Moda Re, a garment reuse and recycling charity, plans to double its volume of 40,000 tons annually. Garments arrive at a factory where they are sorted and processed apart from being recycled. After spending 6 months in the International Space Station, members of NASA's SpaceX Crew 6 bid their farewells ahead of their journey back to Earth. The outgoing members spent their last 6 months conducting vital research and scientific experiments. NASA and SpaceX are focused on the Crew 6's undocking from the space station. Meanwhile, NASA's SpaceX Crew 7 mission, which launched on the 26th of August, arrived at the ISS a day later, featuring 4 new astronauts from 4 countries. And still to come on DD India News Hour, another achievement for Indo-Bangla relations, a trial run on the Nischintapur-Gangasagar rail line this month. And who are the winners and losers of Day 4 of the US Open as well? We'll also get to know who's India's new #1 chess champ?
Namaste India.
Namaste land.
Marhaban ila al-Hind. Zari India.
Salam
India. Namaste India.
Namaskar Bharata.
Mui
Nous
India.
sommes land.
Nahnu hunud. India. Ma Hindi hasti. Mung Hindian. Salam Hindustan.
We are India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. Let's take a look at some other updates that are coming in from across India. Now, Indian Parliamentary Affairs Minister Prasar Joshi has said a committee has been constituted for discussions on the issue of one nation, one election. The minister said report of the committee will be discussed in Parliament. The one nation, one election concept refers to holding simultaneous polls across the country for the federal government as well as for state governments. The Indian government has introduced an invoice incentive scheme, Mera Bill, Mera Adhikar, My Bill, My Right. The objective is to bring a behavioral change in the general public to ask for a bill as their right and entitlement. This scheme has been initially launched as a pilot in selected states and union territories and will give an attractive reward of $10 million to the customers in a lucky draw. As India's defence sector is heading towards self-reliance, Indian warship Mahendragiri has been launched in Mumbai on Friday. The warship has been named after a mountain peak in the Eastern Ghats located in India's eastern state of Odisha. Mahendragiri is a technologically advanced warship and stands as a symbol of India's determination to embrace its rich naval heritage. The flood situation in India's northeastern state of Assam is still grim, as over 400,000 people have been affected in around 19 districts. 9 relief camps with over 100 relief distribution centers have been opened to serve flood-affected people. The State Disaster Relief Force and local administration teams have been deployed in several boats and with medical teams as well on the ground to help with the rescue efforts. And time now to get you some business updates as well. Well, come the 9th of September, and a new chapter will be written on the bilateral ties between India and Bangladesh as the trial run of a goods train from Bangladesh to Nischintapur in the northeastern Indian state of Tripura on the Indian side is expected to begin. A special report from DD India's Agartala correspondent Kunal Shinde.
The train service from Nischintapur to Gangasagar in Bangladesh is expected to start from 9th of September.
All the 4-meter gauge tracks have been completed on the Indian side, and the works on the Bangladesh side are also completed. On 26th August, there was a trial run on the Bangladesh side which was conducted by Bangladesh Railways, in which officers from MEA were also present. So, if all goes well, we hope that we'll be having a goods train trial run on 9 September. So it's a very long cherished project of people of Tripura, and people have been waiting for long to see this project starting.
While the passenger movement from Agartala to Bangladesh will have to be seen when the railway line commences, but it is sure that this particular railway line between the two countries will definitely boost the trade and commerce activities on this border area. With camera person Subrato Shah, this is Kunal Shinde, DD News, Agartala.
The annual inflation in the Eurozone has stayed stable in August at 5.3% and remained unchanged from July. European Union Statistical Agency has said food, alcohol and tobacco prices have been the main drivers of inflation with 9.8%. Energy prices fell by 3.3% year-on-year in August. Slovakia, Croatia and Austria had the highest yearly inflation rates for August. The lowest year-on-year inflation rates were recorded in Belgium, Spain, Cyprus, Greece, the Netherlands as well as Finland. The European Central Bank has raised its key interest rates by 425 basis points, that's 5.25% since July last year, to bring down inflation, which is hovering well above its target of 2%. Electric scooters are no longer available to rent in Paris after residents voted to ban them from the streets. It's the first time a major European city has adopted electric scooters before then choosing to ban them completely. Stuart Smith has more from the French capital.
Since 2018, parking bays like this one have been dedicated to electric scooters, but you won't find any of those here now. The three providers of e-scooters in Paris have packed them up and sent them to other parts of the country, as well as to other parts of Europe. When brought in, they were the new face of city transportation, paid for and unlocked simply via smartphone and non-polluting. But some residents in Paris found them a nuisance and a danger. Last year, 3 riders were killed using them and 459 people injured. That prompted a referendum. Earlier in the year, Parisians were asked if they wanted to keep the scooters. 89% of voters said no, though only 7.5% of those eligible to vote actually expressed an opinion at the ballot box. Nonetheless, the city decided to let the operator licenses expire last month. And so it's back to more traditional forms of transportation in Paris, with operators planning to bring in more e-bikes ahead of the 2024 Olympics. Stuart Smith in Paris, reporting for DD India.
It was good to see that there are still environment-friendly alternatives. Now, we're taking you across to my colleague Anil for all the sports updates as well.
Well, thank you, Gautam, for that quick take. Let's now begin with Manchester United there. Well, Manchester United have been drawn against Bayern Munich in this season of the UEFA Champions League group stage. Paris Saint-Germain will be forced to navigate what looks to be the toughest group in the competition. United, meanwhile, returned to the Champions League after missing out last season. Red Devils were drawn in Group A alongside Bayern Munich, FC Copenhagen and Galatasaray.
The draw of the UEFA Champions League round of 32 was completed in Monaco. With this, European football giants have learned their fate in the UEFA Champions League season 2023-2024. English Premier League giants Manchester United will meet Bundesliga winners Bayern Munich in the group stage. PSG and Borussia Dortmund are in the group of death, while record-time winners Real Madrid will lock horns with Napoli in Group C this season. Let's take a look at the Champions League group stage draw in full. In Group A, Bayern Munich, Manchester United, FC Copenhagen, Galatasaray. In Group B, Sevilla, Arsenal, PSV Eindhoven, Lens. In Group C, Napoli, Real Madrid, SC Barga, Union Berlin. In Group D, Benfica, Inter Milan, FC Salzburg, Real Sociedad. In Group E, Feyenoord, Atletico Madrid, Lazio, Celtic. In Group F, PSG, Borussia Dortmund, AC Milan, Newcastle United. Group G, Manchester City, RB Leipzig, Red Star Belgrade, Young Boys. Group H, Barcelona, FC Porto, Shakhtar Donetsk, Royal Antwerp. This draw held in Monaco is the final time a group stage draw will take place, with UEFA expanding the competition next year to a 36-team format that includes one league table. The group stage will begin on September 19 and it will end on December 12th. The knockout stages will begin in February. This season's final will held at Wembley Stadium in London on June 1st. Sports Desk, DD India.
Well, Jessica Pegula made it to the third round. Elina Svitoluna's 11th Grand Slam match win of the season, and more in our tennis update.
Jessica Pegula makes it to the third round of the fourth consecutive year by defeating Patricia Maria Tig in the second round with 6-3, 6-1. Belarusian Aryna Sabalenka defeated Jody Burch 6-3, 6-2 to reach the third round. World number 2 Sabalenka will now face French woman Clara Burel next. Elina Svitoluna's 11th Grand Slam match win of the season puts her into round 3 by winning against Anastasia 5-7, 6-4, 6-4. Ons Jabeur used every bit of her big match experience to navigate a tricky second round-up match with the 18-year-old Linda Noskova, winning 7-6, 4-6, 6-3. Clara Burel beat former finalist Karolina Pliskova by 6-4, 6-2.
On to the rankings, FIDE chess rankings. India's youngest grandmaster D. Gukesh has officially taken over as India's #1 chess player from his mentor Vishwanathan Anand. World number 8 Gukesh is the new India #1 with a ELO rating as high as 2,758. He also gate-crashed into the top 10 bracket after gaining 3 spots since August 1st by reaching the World Cup quarterfinals, where he lost to the eventual champion, world #1 Magnus Carlsen. Well, that's all in the world of sports. Back to Gautam for more updates.
Thanks a lot, Anil. And that's all we have for the moment in this edition of DD India News Hour as well. But do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram as well. We'll be back with more news and updates as it breaks right here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy with all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India.